So there's this really neat thing called Better Call Saul. Spoilers for Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. Fun fact, Better Call Saul is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. Yay! Happy birthday! Better Call Saul was honestly incredible. If Breaking Bad was perfect, then Better Call Saul was perfecter. That is to say, I like Breaking Bad just a smidgen more personally. So anyway, because I need the Breaking Bad franchise more than I need oxygen, we're revisiting it for another round of Shrek analysis. Basically, it's gonna be about the same as this video where we answer whether or not Breaking Bad characters have watched Shrek, except this time for Better Call Saul. For example, Jimmy McGill, aka Saul Goodman, aka Gene Takovic, aka Slippin' Jimmy, aka Kevin Costner, probably watched Shrek because of how much free time he has and how many pop culture references he makes.
Vince Gilligan fucked my asshole.
However, I can't say the same for his brother. Chuck McGill is the first character who we can confirm, without a doubt, has not watched Shrek. One of Chuck's defining character traits is his belief that he suffers from electromagnetic hypersensitivity, a condition which prevents him from being around electricity. Since this would prevent Chuck from being around television sets and movie theaters, that makes it pretty difficult for Chuck to have watched Shrek. Now, there's always the question of when Chuck's symptoms started to develop. Some of you may point out that he could have seen Shrek before he stopped being around electricity. That's a very valid point, but unfortunately, it seems Chuck's symptoms developed before Shrek came out. In the iconic Better Call Saul episode Chicanery, Chuck is shown to suffer from EHS in a flashback. He is openly distressed when his ex-wife takes out her phone to answer a call. This flashback sadly takes place in 2001, the same year Shrek released. Just to be absolutely certain of whether or not Chuck may have seen Shrek, I took a look back at the script of this episode. Shrek was released on May 18th of 2001, so our last hope is to place this flashback after that date. In said flashback, we can see that Chuck is getting his lawn mowed, the lack of snow indicating that the events shown take place in either spring or summer. Further on in the flashback, Chuck's ex-wife mentions that he has plans for that upcoming autumn.
How's the tour going?
It's good, good. The Far East this fall, China, South Korea, and Vietnam. That's gonna be exciting.
Notice how she doesn't also mention summer. This seems to imply that summer has already passed, or that they are currently in the summertime. This should give Chuck a month or two to watch Shrek before he develops CHS, right? Wrong. Outside of this flashback, a few minutes before the famous chicanery speech, Chuck says that he had been suffering from EHS for some time. What exactly Chuck means by this is up in the air, as some time isn't the most specific measurement of time. However, the fact that his ex-wife didn't know about his condition is telling. Her not knowing about his EHS implies that they were apart for a significant enough amount of time for Chuck and his ex-wife to build up distance between each other, so that Chuck could conceal his condition from her. Maybe it's enough time to allow Chuck to move out, or for his ex to plan all her trips around the world. Either way, some time is probably a long time, at least a month or two. This would place the development of Chuck's EHS sometime in mid-spring, just before Shrek came out. Chuck suffers from this condition until the end of his life. Once he started developing EHS, he probably never watched television again. Therefore, with this big stack of evidence in hand, we can conclude that Chuck physically could not have watched Shrek. On a much simpler note, it's very likely that Kim Wexler watched Shrek, primarily because of how much time she spends with Jimmy over the course of the series. Watching movies together is like their thing. Who's to say that one of those movies wasn't Shrek? Howard Hamlin is a likely Shrek watcher as well. Howard Hamlin is a man of character. Though initially presented as kind of a douche, we see throughout the series that he actually has a lot of determination. In the episode Axe and Grind, we are presented with a problem for Howard in his estranged marriage. Because his relationship with his wife is strained, one can assume that Howard spends many nights sleeping on the couch, where the TV usually is. This leaves Howard in the perfect position to watch Shrek on late-night television. This viewing of the movie also explains Howard's character. Watching Shrek's difficulties with Fiona probably made Howard feel more comfortable in the face of his marriage disputes. It simply makes sense that Howard watched Shrek. And it makes sense that Nacho Varga also did. as well as Lalo Salamanca. Again, we have cases of characters who have a ton of free time on their hands and who spend time with people who would definitely want to watch Shrek. Nacho Varga has 2 weed-smoking girlfriends. That's right, girlfriends who don't just smoke cigarettes, but weed cigarettes. And Lalo has a whole family. It's perfect. Both of them can have a family movie night with good old Shrek. And I think that even though Juan Bolsa wasn't invited to said movie nights, he still finds time to watch Shrek as well. It is shown in the episode Bad Choice Road that Juan Bolsa prefers to live a simple life, living in his own hacienda and working as a farmer. Now, I would also describe my current life as simple, and I've watched Shrek. Therefore, by transitive property, Juan Bolsa has also watched Shrek. Don Eladio has likely also watched Shrek for the same reasons as Lalo, Nacho, and Saul from the last video. We have no idea what this guy gets up to in his spare time, which he seems to have a lot of. However, he's always in good spirits, and as we proved in the last video, Shrek leads to happiness. One might even say that Shrek is love. Shrek is life. Francesca Liddy seems like the kind of person to have watched Shrek, disliked it, and saw a brief moment of vindication when Shrek 3 turned out the way it did. In her spare time, she can probably found blaspheming Shrek and pledging allegiance to his evil arch-rival Drek. The Kettlemans have children. Like with Mike Ehrmantraut in the last video, having to take care of those little abominations automatically increases the chancing of having watched Shrek tenfold. Victor and Tyrus are Gus Fring's right-hand men in the Breaking Bad universe. How can it hold both of them? Doesn't matter, the point is, what Gus does, they do too, and almost vice versa, because Victor and Tyrus have totally watched Shrek even though Gus hasn't. They need to be prepared for any sort of eventuality, and I'd argue that having to sit through Shrek 3 can be considered military-grade training. They had to watch Shrek to be prepared. Now Kiss. Jeff is one of the few major characters to be recast over Better Call Saul's run, and his personalities almost seem to shift depending on the actor, so I will be ranking 2 Jeffs separately. Don Harvey Jeff has that 6th grade band kid stink on him. I think he's way too into Shrek if anything. Pat Healy Jeff, though, is respectable and docile. He's kinda giving, come on guys, I don't think we're a supposed to because mommy said no. He won't watch anything if it's not a cartoon. And what is Shrek if not a cartoon? Yeah, so any way you slice it, no matter how much plastic surgery you get, you can't get rid of the Shrek. Marion is one of the more surprising picks for Shrek watchers in my opinion, but it makes sense. In the Season 6 episode of Better Call Saul, Nippy, Jean teaches Marion how to search up videos on her laptop, and eventually Marion doesn't need help to use the computer at all. Just 2 episodes later in Waterworks, she's able to use a search engine all by herself. Not only does this make her more tech-savvy than my grandparents, if you guys are watching this, I'm kidding, I love you, but it shows us that Marion knows her way around YouTube.com. Now, what is important to note here is that the black and white flash-forwards throughout Better Call Saul take place in late 2010. This is right about the same time when the Shrek fandom really started picking up steam. With this in mind, is it that far-fetched to assume that 3 or 4 years later, Marion stumbles across something like this, wonders what Shrek is, and watches the movie and later on the entire franchise, becoming a devout broger? I mean, when you put it that way. But yeah, basically Marion watched Shrek. And last, but certainly not least, the greatest character, not just in Better Call Saul, but across all of fiction, Lyle. Now looking at Lyle, what do you make of him? He's a hard worker at Los Pollos Hermanos, doesn't look explicitly evil, but does he look familiar? Let's break it down. Round face with big eyes, short brown hair. Does he remind you of anyone? What if I bring up an image for comparison? That's right. Lyle was secretly Rumpelstiltskin this entire time. You might be thinking that this is absurd, but let's look at the facts. Rumpelstiltskin is an expert at using magic through signing contracts. Even though he gets captured at the end of Shrek Forever After, is it that crazy to guess that he maybe wrote up a contract to rebuild the world into Albuquerque, New Mexico, where he works at a lowly chicken restaurant to avoid suspicion that he is in fact Rumpelstiltskin? I think it checks out. The two look similar and the stories even make sense. So we arrive at the conclusion that Lyle didn't just watch Shrek, he lived it.
And there you have it. Better Call Saul has been sufficiently analyzed. Be sure to tune in next time where I go into detox because I'm still addicted to Vince Gilligan. I mean, it's either that or I take a look at El Camino, and that's never gonna happen. Yeah, I'll probably get to it eventually. And that's where this video initially ended. However, while I was editing this video, Universal decided to drop the Shrek 5 cast announcement teaser trailer. I had no idea that this was gonna come out while I was making this video. That was pretty silly of them. To tell you my thoughts about the trailer, okay, so I don't think we should be worried just yet. Yes, the animation looks different, his older design is definitely better, but I don't think it's that bad, to be honest. Like, I mean, that's still obviously Shrek. And you can tell that there's effort put into the animation, unlike a certain other DreamWorks franchise sequel. Let's not get into that, though. And yes, I am a little worried that they're gonna try too hard to lean into Shrek's popularity online and make something stupid and cringe. Kinda like this video. Oh. And that's gonna do it for now. I'm gonna leave my window open for any carrier pigeons flying in and telling me which characters I missed. And Universal, if you mess up Shrek, then I will see to it that you all go bankrupt. Good day.
I'm not crazy. I knew she was supposed to marry me. I knew she was number 3, one after 2, as if I could ever make such a mistake. Never. Never. I just couldn't prove it. He covered his tracks. He got that donkey played by Eddie Murphy to cover for him. You think this is something? You think this is bad? This chicanery? He's done worse. Those signs. Are you telling me that they just happened to appear like that? No, he drew them. Shrek. He beat up all my knights. And I saved him. I shouldn't have. I let him go on my quest. What was I thinking? He'll never change. He'll never change. Ever since he was a little ogre baby. Always the same. Couldn't keep the fairy tale creatures out of his swamp. But not our Shrek. Couldn't be precious Shrek doing the roar. And she wants to marry the ogre? What a sick joke. I should have stopped him when I had the chance. And you have to stop him. You